So a little bit about the Extrude Tool. So in this case, I'm just going to do a really simple, like trying to make a glass, or like a drinking glass, or like a trash can. So I just made a cylinder. I'm going to shrink the bottom down for effect, because a lot of cylinders sort of do that, or a lot of trash cans do that. So what I'm going to do is just select the upper faces. I just selected all of the faces and then Control marquee selected to get rid of that selection. So you can see that I only have the top ones done. And then there's 3 ways to get to the Extrude Tool. Either do Control E. You can click on this button here, the plane with the sort of orange nub coming out. Or you can go to Edit Mesh and Extrude. So the extrude handle, this is the extrude handle. It behaves a little bit differently from the regular handle, which it's pretty much translate, rotate, and scale in one. So it starts out being translate. If this center button is like this little blue square, you're in translate mode, so like I can translate this around. Click on any one of these, like the squares that are like right above the arrows. You'll notice that the center icon changes to a cube, and then you can scale your extrude. And then if you click on this circle going around the gimbal, you can get to the rotate mode. And then, just click on whichever one to swap between them. So in this case, I'm going to scale it out. Say that's a pretty reasonable, I guess, distance for my trash can to exist in, or a thickness for my trash can. So I'm going to hit G to repeat the extrude tool. I'm going to shift the bottom of the trash can down, and then scale the whole thing in. If I go to wireframe mode, I can see a little bit better the distance that I am scaling. So then if I wanted to maybe add like a little lip on the bottom of the trash can, I can select these bottom faces here. G for extrude again. I'll just scale this in. In this case, I'm being lazy and I'm just hitting R to use the regular scale tool. And now you've made yourself a very ugly little trash can. So that's like the super basics of how to use the extrude tool. There is one more thing that's kind of cool about it. Cool, I can work with this enormous sphere. So one thing you can do, if you extrude, it'll pop up this little menu here, and if you turn off keep faces together. Okay, so when you turn it on, normally what it's going to do is pretty much just make a shell and keep all of your faces attached together. So if I turn keep faces together off and I pull these out, you can see that the faces are no longer connected. It's a really, really, really easy way to make like a giant spiky ball or like a durian or something weird if you needed to. So that's just one cool thing to be aware of. You'll also notice that when you're working with the extrude handle, when you scale the faces, or when you manipulate the faces, it affects all of the faces basically as if it's its own object. So if I were to go into the default scale tool here, still having all these faces selected and scale them, it's going to affect them all as one object. That's like the default way that Maya likes to work with things. There is actually a way to compensate for that. If I double click on the scale tool to bring up the tool settings, and click on axis orientation, set that to component, and then it'll actually behave as if each one of these little squares faces is its own object, which it does. Pretty much, again, the same thing as the extrude tool. So if you've gone a few steps past the extruding and you can't get to that handle, that's another way to accomplish pretty much the same thing. But yeah, so I mean, that's basically extruding. You can also do, you don't necessarily need to extrude faces. It also works with edge loops. So say I wanted to make a little 3-walled room or something like that. I'll just select the edges, extrude them up. And then it also works, for some reason, one of the main reasons I end up using the extrude tool is it'll actually work on objects as well. So if I take this whole object and I extrude it, I can just like thicken this object. Sometimes it works really weirdly, like a lot of times people have these hard angles like this. It's not perfect, but If you just need like quick thickness to an object, it's totally not bad. Not a bad thing to use for that at all. I make a lot of like 3D printed armor and stuff like that, and I'll be like, boop, extrude, cool. It's now thick instead of just being a single plane. So that's pretty much the extrude tool in a nutshell.